Ken Rohla is somebody who I've gotten the opportunity to interview on my broadcast. It's a cool thing to do a radio show because you get to have all these people on that you may have heard on other shows or you've read their articles and so on and so forth. And health is really one of my favorite topics, but he's not just a health researcher. He really has a lot more behind his information than your typical vitamin C's good, you know, whatever the typical health stuff might be, because he really understands the eugenics campaign, or maybe it's better called a population control campaign, and he truly understands, unfortunately, the evildoers, and more importantly, what to do about the scumbags. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ken Rohla from Fresh and Alive.
Yes, as Bob mentioned, I've been a naughty boy for a long time. Back in the early 90s, I worked with free energy technology and had friends hurt and killed. And so I do know very well about the agendas. I've seen them up close. I've seen things that people wouldn't believe. And so I got into natural health about 25 years ago because I needed to heal myself. And because of my background in electrical engineering and because of my interest in quantum physics and free energy and advanced technologies, I saw things in healing that other people weren't seeing. And so I have been teaching about that ever since and showing advanced methods for healing. And as it turns out nowadays, we've got a lot of things that are threatening our health that most people aren't aware of, like nuclear fallout or genetically engineered microbes, biowarfare agents, nanotechnology, geoengineering pollutants. Most of you are probably familiar with that, spraying heavy metals in the atmosphere, but also desiccated human blood cells full of genetically engineered microbes. There's no way you can justify that as weather control. It's definitely a population control agenda. And then genetically engineered organisms, GMO food. It boggles my mind at how many people are not aware of the damage that genetically engineered food causes to the body and what to do about it. There are actually ways to revert GMO DNA back to the original heirloom. And the reason is because the pattern, the genetic pattern, is not in the DNA. The DNA is the carrier of the genetic pattern, but it is not the pattern. The pattern is in consciousness itself. And I'm going to be showing you guys how this stuff works and practical things that you can do to keep yourself happy and healthy and keep these biowarfare agents out of your body, neutralize radioactivity in the atmosphere, in your yard, on your garden, and in your body, how to get these nuclear particles out and neutralize them within the body, really inexpensively too. This is going to take every bit of 90 minutes. This is usually a 2-hour to 3-hour presentation, so I'm going to be zooming through this. And I know I don't want to miss Jordan Maxwell or Bob Tuscan or any other folks, so I'm going to do my best to get this done as fast as possible. And I don't expect you to be able to take notes at the rate that I'm going to be going. Therefore, I have made these slides available and other notes on my website, and I would highly recommend you write that URL down, downloads.freshandalive.com. You can download these, and you can look at them in detail, including a lot of other information there, including instructions on how to make your own supplements and medicines and heal yourself. Okay? So be sure to write that down because I'll be showing this at the end of the presentation, this URL as well. But I obviously won't have time for questions in this format. So, back in, now first of all, I'm going to, with this kind of a crowd, the first few slides I'm going to really zoom through because with this kind of crowd, you guys, I think most of you already know that geoengineering, spraying heavy metals in the atmosphere is a problem. I think you guys know. I see lots and lots of people stating the problem, but they don't state the solution. I like to focus on the solution. So I'm going to zoom through the problem because I don't have to convince you guys that this is going on so much. You know, some crowds I really have to show the evidence, the patents, and all the things on geoengineering to show people that this is really going on. But it's not at all a conspiracy theory. Dr. David Keith from Harvard University is the Gordon McKay Professor of Applied Physics at Harvard. He's also the 2009 Time Magazine Hero of the Environment recipient for developing a company that sprays heavy metals into the atmosphere globally to the tune of 10 to 20 million metric tons every year. So this guy's been on the Colbert Report. He's been all over mainstream television. He's been out in the media promoting this idea that, oh my gosh, we've got global warming and climate change, and the only thing that we know how to do is spray metals up in the atmosphere to reflect the heat back from the sun and cool the planet down. It's utter nonsense. And as he states, and other geoengineers state, they got the idea for doing this from observing what happens when volcanoes, there we go, when volcanoes blow. When volcanoes blow, they shoot up a large amount of ash into the atmosphere, and it spreads out for thousands of miles, and it cools the earth. It acts as a shield, and it reflects sunlight, and it cools the earth down about 1 degree. Now, the great thing about volcanoes is they remineralize the earth. And so it's a very, very beneficial part of the ecosystem of the earth. Volcanoes going off remineralizes the earth, and not just with regular old macro minerals that we're familiar with, but also superconducting minerals that are extremely healing and regenerative to all living organisms. And we're going to be talking about those. So anyway, the good news is it's illegal to be spraying us. The 1998 National Defense Authorization Act, Public Law 10585, specifically prohibits the use of human subjects for testing of chemical and biological agents. That's the good news. The bad news is there are exceptions. And the exceptions are any peaceful purpose that's related to a medical, therapeutic, pharmaceutical, agricultural, industrial, or research activity, any purpose that's directly related to protection against toxic chemicals or biological weapons and agents, and any law enforcement purpose, including any purpose related to riot control. So basically, the government can spray us, but we can't spray ourselves. Like how that works. There's a really good YouTube video that was on the Discovery Channel or the History Channel called Declassified Human Experimentation, because very often I get the question, well, why would they be spraying us with this toxic stuff? If they're spraying it everywhere, it's affecting them. Why would they do it? I just can't believe the government would spray us. The government has a long, long history of doing a lot of really stupid, toxic things to populations. They're not the brightest people. I used to work with the North Carolina Hospital Association with lobbyists, and I can tell you, man, politicians, majority of them are just brain dead. I mean, they're corrupt. A lot of them are extremely dumb, and they're in it for the power and the money. And so, no, they're not thinking. They also aren't informed. A lot of times these politicians are going on, summaries that they're getting from the military or whoever, and also the military leaders that are doing this stuff. They all have agendas. They all have awareness, and, I mean, if you're in an organization that essentially its motive is to kill people, how aware are you going to be? So there is a long history of this, and it's not at all a conspiracy. There are a couple of movies that cover this very well in detail. What in the world are they spraying, and why in the world are they spraying? I just met with Michael Murphy, who helped produce these movies out in Los Angeles, and these people, man, they are really, really sacrificing to get this information out, working hard and being attacked. He's had several attempts on his life. I've had death threats for some of the technologies I've developed to help humanity. So, some of the effects of geoengineering. Now, they're spraying aluminum powders, barium, and strontium. And these metals, first of all, they do reflect sunlight. They also filter out certain frequencies of cosmic radiation, also known as scalar energy, or the other names for it, tachyon energy, zero-point energy. This faster than light, this superluminal light that's coming down to the Earth that's awakening humanity, these metals filter out specific frequencies to suppress the awareness and expansion of consciousness. So that's one of the things, along with obviously filtering out sunlight. There are other agendas, though. When aluminum comes down onto the soil, it alters the pH of the soil and it blocks nutrient uptake in plants. Fortunately, Monsanto has a whole lot of genetically engineered crops ready to go that are very aluminum resistant, so we don't have to worry. We'll have a whole slew of GMO crops that we can eat. But the aluminum blocks the nutrient uptake. It also is a fire accelerant, so when it comes down on lands everywhere and it lands on forests and trees and plants, they burn up a lot quicker if there's a forest fire. And that's exactly what's been going on. If you look at all these fires they've had on California over the last few years, the firefighters will tell you, man, these fires are going up like crazy, much, much faster, much worse. And it's because you've got aluminum all over these plants. Aluminum is put into fireworks as it's what makes them burn and explode. And of course, aluminum also gets into living organisms, and in the human body and in animals, it interferes with the brain and nervous system. These metals get into the nervous system, into the brain neural pathways, and they block neural receptors, they block neural firing, and you get all sorts of neuromuscular diseases. And so a lot of times, for example, like autism. Autism is usually caused by metals, mercury, and aluminum getting to the brain and short-circuiting neural pathways, and you get these neuromuscular disorders. And you can actually heal it completely by pulling these metals out. I've done it many times with autism, with MS, MD, Parkinson's disease. All these neuromuscular disorders can be healed if you understand how to detoxify the body, how to pull these metals out and regenerate cells. Now, another interesting agenda with all of this is making money, of course. There's always a profit motive behind these types of things. And in the case of geoengineering, you can actually speculate now on the weather and make money from it. On the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, you can actually buy weather futures. And so the agricultural companies know this, and they are investing heavily in weather futures and betting against their own crops. So they actually make more money if their crops fail than if they don't. So they have no incentive whatsoever to produce healthy, good crops. They win either way. There are obviously military and political agendas. There is a paper I'm going to show you in a moment from the Air Force where they explicitly state that they want to control the weather globally by 2025. If you can control the weather of a country, you can blackmail countries into your political agendas. You can cut off their water, you can cut off their rain, you can destroy their crops, you can make their people rebel and overthrow governments. There's a lot of agendas involved in this. Now, these I'm going to go over very quickly, just to show you this is not, again, a conspiracy theory. I think most of you don't need much convincing, but the American Meteorological Society did a research paper called Indirect and Semi-Direct Aerosol Campaigns, and they had, I think, about 26 research scientists involved in this paper. These are 13 of them right here. There's the other 13. Our good old friends at the Council on Foreign Relations had a workshop a couple years back on geoengineering, and the workshop was on unilateral planetary scale geoengineering. So the powers that be know very well about this. They're having meetings about it. Governments are having meetings about this stuff. They're discussing it, what to do, how to do it. Now, the journal Science, the world's leading journal of original scientific research and global news and commentary. It's a very trusted physics journal. They've got articles on geoengineering, the politics of geoengineering, tests for geoengineering, shifting the debate on geoengineering, because obviously it's insane to be spraying toxic metals in the atmosphere. David Keith, it's amazing, he's on public television telling people we've got to spray sulfuric acid in the environment, in the atmosphere, to get rid of acid rain. How does that work? You know, I was taught in engineering school, it's like to neutralize an acid, you have to get a base and mix with it. So I don't think adding acid to the atmosphere is going to neutralize acid rain. It's insane. And of course, the reason this is because these people are lying. You know, they're lying about what's really going on, what the motives are, and what the purposes are. The Atmospheric Radiation Measurement Program by the U.S. Department of Energy has an article on their website, and all this is public. It's not hidden behind passwords or anything, logins. Indirect and semi-direct aerosol campaigns. There's the Air Force paper commissioned in 1996, and it explicitly states the motives for controlling the weather globally by 2025. Weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2025. And you can download this. Just Google that. Google owning the weather in 2025. You can go straight to it and download it. It's right on their website. They're having conferences about geoengineering. And geoengineering is the politically correct term for this, because if you use the word chemtrails, you're going to be labeled as a quack by the mainstream scientific community. UNESCO has information on their website. There are tons of patents. There are hundreds of patents, 320 plus on geoengineeringwatch.org alone for this technology. Obviously, if this is not a conspiracy theory, there has to be a real-world paper trail. And even with military projects, even if the patents go subvert, they still have to be listed in various places. So you can follow this paper trail. There are hundreds of patents. Some of them explicitly state what they're for. Some of them explicitly state, for global weather control. There are search terms you can search on. We won't go over these. You can just download these slides and check out the search terms. The UK House of Commons has a paper on their website for the regulation of geoengineering, and in that paper, they note the need for regulation. They also note the need to collaborate with the U.S. Congress. So U.S. Congress and UK legislatures, the Parliament, they all know about this stuff. Not the entire Congress necessarily, but they've got committees who are working with this stuff. They know about it. It's not like they're clueless. Now here's an interesting one. The Rothschild-owned defense contractor Raytheon does all forecast modeling for the National Weather Service and NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Lockheed Martin does the modeling for the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. Since both of these private defense contractors are up to their necks in weather modification patents and programs, the forecasts are more or less scheduled weather. Also, E.L. Rothschild, a private investment company, owns a 70% interest in Weather Central, the world's leading provider of interactive weather graphics and data services for television, web, and mobile. So you're not getting the truth about what's really going on in the atmosphere or with the weather. There's a Nobel Prize issued to Paul Crutzen and Mario Molina for the ozone layer, the Achilles heel of the biosphere. So again, this stuff is being studied all over the place. There are lots of scientists that know about this stuff. This is an aerial photograph of the southeastern United States, and because one of the arguments that these geoengineers will make that there's no conspiracy and that there's no geoengineering going on is they'll say, well, these are just contrails. Well, these are aircraft patterns from, quote, contrails over the southeastern United States. If these airlines are flying these traffic patterns, they're going to go broke really fast. Going back and forth in a grid pattern, first of all, you're going to have a lot of pissed off customers. It's like, where the hell am I at? And then you're not going to make any money. We'll slide over these. You guys can check out these. These are various links to people who are studying this stuff scientifically. I've got a ton of this kind of information on my website at radiationlinks.freshandlive.com. Morgellons disease is related to this. Some of these biowarfare agents that they're spraying. Morgellons disease is this really gruesome disease where you develop lesions on the surface of your skin, and you grow these fibers. These fibers grow out of you that nobody can identify, or at least doctors who are using conventional medicine can't identify, because they're created by what's called a cross-domain organism, cross between a bacteria and a fungus. And they create these really weird fibers that look like fishing string that will grow out of the surface of the skin. And typically it comes with people who have a diet that will feed them, which is a diet high in acids and starches and processed foods and things like that, rather than a living foods diet high in chlorophyll and juices and fresh food. These GMO fibers are also found in our food supply, even organic food, even biodynamic food. If you're growing outdoors, you most likely have these fibers in your food. And we most likely have these in our bodies, depending on what we're doing. The good news is you can get rid of them, and that's what I'm going to be showing you. But this stuff is global. It's everywhere. It's not just the United States, although we are one of the more heavily chemtrail countries. These are fibers in pig lungs and also in rhododendron. These are Morgellons fibers, and this was the least gruesome Morgellons example I could find online. Usually they're really horrific. They look awful. Sores and lesions all over a person's body and these fibers growing out. But this is what it looks like in a very, very mild case. And this can be healed. I've helped people heal Morgellons disease. Using pathogens like this is nothing new. It's actually been around for thousands of years. Even the ancients tried to hurt each other and battle with bacteria. things like that. The Japanese in World War II used the Lyme disease spirochete for biowarfare. There's a book called Spirochete Warfare by Elena Cook, if you want to see information on that. Now, as I said, I like to focus on the solutions, so we're going to get to the solutions. How do you get this out of living organisms? Now, first of all, I have to tell you, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. I'm not any kind of licensed healthcare professional of any kind. I'm just a guy who's figured a few things out and done it for myself. So I'm sharing with you information and opinions of my own. Do not construe this as medical advice or health advice of any kind. In fact, I highly recommend you don't take any of my advice. I highly recommend that you use a licensed healthcare professional and do everything that the FDA would like you to do so that they'll be happy. All right? So, I have another presentation, and I also do classes in how to get into all the details of how to do this in the body. We're just going to go over the basic concepts. And the first thing with any kind of a health issue always is to test and evaluate your health status. So there are tests that I know of that you can do that will identify biowarfare agents, it will identify radioactivity in the body, it will identify GMOs, it will identify EMF damage, and all sorts of things. So I use out of the ordinary biological testing along with conventional medical testing sometimes. I used to work in a medical pathology lab doing the testing in hospitals, so I know that most of that testing for these kinds of things is not very effective. But there are methods, and I will get into the specifics of it. Unfortunately, not into a lot of the specifics of it in this presentation, but I do have it in others. And if you go to that downloads page, you can see the specifics. So you get testing. I like using a device called a QXCI SCIO or Indigo. That is a quantum biofeedback device, and it can identify all these things in the body. But it can also send energy back into the body. And interestingly enough, I discovered a little over a year ago that it will neutralize radioactivity in the body as well. Now, I've had radiation poisoning 3 times now, and I've had biowarfare agents in me 4 times. A lot of people get contaminated by this stuff, and they get very sick, but they don't know what it is. And then it passes, and they think, oh, well, you know, I just had a really bad flu bug or food poisoning or something, when in fact they've had radiation poisoning or one of these biowarfare bugs in them. I know how to identify them, and so I test whenever I get sick, and a lot of times, I'm testing all the time anyway, because I'm testing supplements and various therapies and things all the time, so I see what's going on in my body, and I test other people. But I'm never going to volunteer for radiation poisoning, so Spirit just kind of throws it at me and makes me deal with it. And when I figure it out, then I share it with people. And so that's what happened. I got radiation poisoning from food. Every time it was from food. It wasn't any kind of a conspiracy. Nobody was trying to kill me. Not that some people wouldn't like to. But so I got it on my food. My wife, we had a really big salad. We grow most of our own food, but we had some from the health food store. She didn't get sick at all. I got really sick. And first time around, it took me about 10 days to get rid of it. And then several months later, maybe 6 months later, I got it again, and it took me about 5 days to get rid of it. And then maybe 6 weeks ago, I got poisoning again, and it took me about 36 hours to get over it. So I've learned and figured out how to deal with this stuff, and that's what I'm sharing with you guys. So the SCIO can actually neutralize radioactivity in the body. We have some really cool supplements I'm going to be showing you that can pull it out and neutralize it within the body. And also these biowarfare bugs and this nanotechnology. So once you get testing, then you need to do internal cleansing. And I always, you know, if you're in dire straits and you're really sick at the moment, then you've got to do what you got to do to heal the problem of the moment. But in general, everybody should be ingesting things that are detoxing them on a daily basis, and then they should be doing periodic cleansing at least a couple of times a year, doing some comprehensive cleansing to really pull this stuff out of your body. And you know, even before all these insane biowarfare agents and stuff, this is a good idea anyway, just from chemical farming. You also these days, because we've got nuclear fallout coming down, and by the way, in Pennsylvania, you guys have some of the highest rates of nuclear fallout coming down on you. There have been studies done in Pennsylvania on your water supply, and you've got high levels of cesium, and you've got increased mortality rates here that's been verified by mainstream scientists that's increasing your mortality rate. So you guys really need to be protecting yourself against this fallout, and you're protecting yourself and detoxing from what's in your food and your water. But along with internal cleansing, you've got to do external cleansing. And so if you get out in the rain, you better get yourself washed off when you get inside and dried off, because this stuff is coming down in the rain. And you can measure it with a Geiger counter. You don't have to take my word for it. You know, you can buy a good Geiger counter for around $600, and you can test this stuff yourself. You can take swipes from cars after rain and things like that. You can take the dust from the intakes of your air conditioning, and you can check it. Very often it's radioactive. So zeolites, there is an extrinsic zeolite powder you can get. You can throw it in your wash. You can take baths with it, and you can clean this stuff off the surface of your body. There are also other things. There's something called microblast, which was originally developed for agriculture. That's really good for breaking these things down. Biowash, you can use these in your environment. Also a soap called Miracle 2 soap is very good for getting this stuff off your body. Then, when you're not in dire straits, just on a daily basis, you've got to build your immune system and nutrify your body and alkalize your body while you're detoxing. So every day I take nutrient tonics that are also detoxifiers. And they've got in them vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, and then specific detoxifiers like zeolites, nanozeolites, that can get these metals and these toxins and these agents out of the brain and out of all the cells in the body. Hydration is also very, very important, because basically as long as you can poop and pee, you can heal just about anything. And so getting fluids going through you and running it through the cells, running it through the body, that's a major, major thing for keeping healthy and detox. So drinking lots of water and fresh juices, organic juices, not GMO juices, obviously. You know, everybody wants to be doing at least organic food. And organic food, I can tell you, is not even, it's not even up to par for the most part. Unless you're getting it from a local farmer, most of the organic food that's being sold, it's picked early, it's not allowed to ripen, and it doesn't have the nutrient levels. It's also grown a lot of times in depleted soils. You can use a device called a Brix meter, B-R-I-X, to check the nutrient levels in your food and your produce, and you can see this for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Now, there are some really, really cool supplements that have come out that we can use to protect ourselves, and we always will have solutions for this stuff, because the one gigantic, big, fat, stinking trump card that we have, that the powers that be don't want us to know that we have, is that consciousness creates reality. And so when you look at the physics of how consciousness creates reality, this is not some metaphysical metaphor. There are physical mechanisms for this happening. And when you understand those mechanisms, the energy that creates these problems, that creates the consciousness that develops these problems, the opposite polarities of those energies also simultaneously create the solutions, always. Always. Forever and ever. 2,000 years ago. Today. 100 years from now. It's like whatever crazy crap that these insane people come up with, there will always be solutions for them, because consciousness creates reality. There are already people on this planet that have solutions for all this stuff. I'm one of them, but there are many, many others. And so all you have to do when you understand that is seek them out. Seek out the solutions. What most people do when they find out about this stuff is they get depressed and they get in victimhood, because that's how they've been programmed to be, or I should say mind controlled to be. And they go, oh, woe is me, gosh, it's horrible, I wish I could do something. Well, you can. If you truly get that you create your reality, then you never get into victimhood, and you just search for the answers and you find them. So with that said, there is a whole new class of supplements that are coming out that are really cool. I call them Ormus homeopathics, and they are waters that have monoatomic minerals in them that are programmed with frequencies. Now, what does that mean? And by the way, we've got some folks right across from my table outside there selling Ormus products. I highly recommend you check them out and listen to some of the stories that they tell, because this is one of our silver bullets for these kinds of crazy toxins that are coming out. But ORMUS is just an acronym, orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. And that just means there are certain minerals or certain elements on the periodic chart. The platinum group for you geeks, it's the platinum group metals, gold, silver, mercury, copper. They normally exist as metals, and what makes them look and appear like metals, being silvery and or shiny and solid, metallic looking, is that their atoms are bound together in some kind of three-dimensional grid. And that three-dimensional grid gives them their appearance. Well, you can run them through certain processes like photosynthesis, like fermentation, like vortexing them in water in magnetic fields, and you can break them down into individual atoms. And when you break them down into individual atoms, they no longer appear to be metals, they look like white ceramic powders. There are many legends and stories about this throughout time, about white powder of gold and manna and things like this, and this is what this stuff is. You can make it yourself. Nature makes it all the time. It's made naturally in plants, and animals ingest them. So if you've got these platinum group metals and gold and silver and mercury and copper in your soil, microbes will eat them and break them down into these monoatomics, and plants will then uptake them. So if you're living like I am in Florida, where you don't have a lot of these minerals in the soil, you can use volcanic rock powders to feed the soil, and these plants can uptake them. And that's exactly what I do. And I've been working with people that are growing food with monoatomics of various kinds and getting insane amounts of growth. For example, tomato plants in Texas. Texas soil is very rich in minerals, especially these ORMUS minerals, but it's not bioavailable. Well, this company developed a product, which I can't tell you, unfortunately, because they've had attempts on their life. But I will tell you about it in these slides. I'm just not going to tell you which one it is. So if you use these supplements in these slides, you'll bump into it. But they put this stuff on soil in Texas on tomato farms, and they wound up getting 15-foot high tomato plants with 3,000 to 4,000 nutrient-dense tomatoes per vine. So the argument that organics can't feed the world is a bunch of nonsense, particularly when you know about ORMUS. And these ORMUS supplements that are being sold outside, you can use them for growing food. And I do this routinely. You know, I sprout, and I have hydroponic tower gardens at my house that I grow food with, and I also grow out in the soil, and all of it gets fed ORMUS, all of it. When you see, for example, in Hawaii, you see seeds growing into plants and trees directly off of lava rock. There's no soil there. How is it that they do that? It's these superconducting minerals. They are very high in lava and volcanic rock. So volcanic rock powders, volcanic ash, they're extremely high in these very regenerative mineral powders. And you can buy them really cheap, and you can put them on your soil, you can feed them to plants, you can put them in ferments, and you can feed them to yourself. It's one of the things I have on that downloads page are instructions on how to make your own probiotic, and you can throw rock powders into it and make your own ORMUS medicines, which you can then heal yourself with. So anyway, this class of supplements, these ORMUS homeopathics, they've got these superconducting minerals in them, and they act, these minerals act like antennas for this faster than light subtle energy that's around us all the time. Scientists now are calling it scalar energy. It's gone by many other names: chi, prana, life force, orgone, tachyon energy, 0-point energy, whatever you want to call it. It's superluminal light that's zooming through the cosmos all the time, and it passes through